Uncomfortably twisted into a supposedly professional posture, Bertram wrought with hammer and last, while putting off, with lame, blind, and halting excuses, such as came to call for their promised footgear. By a triumph of tact, he had just disposed of a rancid-tongued female who demanded her husband's boots. A satisfactory explanation, or the arbitrament of the lists, when the bell tinkled and the two watchers in the back room heard a nervous, cultivated voice say, "Is Mr. Fichtell here?" "That's me," said Bertram, landing an agonizing blow on his thumbnail.
"You advertised that you'd found an old book."
"Yes, sir. Someone left it in the post office."
"Ah, that must have been when I went to mail some letters to New York," said the other glibly. "From the advertised description, this book is without doubt mine. Now, as to the reward—"
"Excuse me, but you wouldn't expect me to give it up without any identification, sir?"
"Certainly not. It was Demeritus Liberor—"
"I can't read Latin, sir."
"But you can make that much out," said the visitor with rising exasperation. "Come, if it's a matter of the reward, how much?"
"I wouldn't mind having a good reward, say $10. But I want to be sure it's your book. There's something about it that you could easily tell me, sir, for anyone could see it."
"A very observant shoemaker," commented the other with a slight sneer. "You mean the half-split cover?" Swish, 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 sounded from the rear room.
"Excuse me," said Bertram, who had not ceased from his pretended work. "I have to get a piece of leather." He stepped into the back room, where Average Jones, his face alight, held up a piece of paper upon which he had hurriedly scrawled, "Manuscript bound into cover. Get it out of him. Tell him you have a brother who is a Latin scholar." Bertram nodded, caught up a strip of calfskin, and returned. "Yes, sir," he said. "The split cover and what's inside?" The other started.
"You didn't get it out!" he cried. "You didn't tear it!"
"No, sir, it's there safe enough, but some of it can be made out."
"You said you didn't read Latin."
"No, sir, but I have a brother that went through the academy. He reads a little."
This was thin ice, but Bertram went forward with assumed assurance.
"He thinks the manuscript is quite rare. Oh, Fritz, come in."
"Any letter of Bacon's is rare, of course," returned the other impatiently. "Therefore, I propose offering you $50 reward."
He looked up as Average Jones entered. The young man's sleeves were rolled up, his face was generously smudged, and a strip of cobbler's wax beneath the upper lip puffed and distorted the firm line of his mouth. Further, his head was louting low on his neck, so that the visitor got no view sufficient for recognition. "Lord Bacon's letter must be pretty rare, mister," he drawled thickly. "But a letter from Lord Bacon about Shakespeare? That ought to be worth a lot of money." Average Jones had taken his opening with his customary incisive shrewdness. The mention of Bacon had settled it to his mind. Only one imaginable character of manuscript from the philosopher, scholar, politician could have value enough to tempt a thief of Enderby's caliber. Enderby's expression told that the shot was a true one. As for Bertram, he had dropped his shoemaker's knife and his shoemaker's roll. Bacon on Shakespeare? Shades of the departed glory of Ignatius Donnelly! The visitor drew back. Warren's gaunt frame appeared in the doorway. Jones' head lifted. "It ought to be as unique," he drawled, "as an ancient Roman speaking perfect English." Like a flash, the false Livius caught up the knife from the bench where the false cobbler had dropped it, and swung toward Average Jones. At the moment the ample hand of Professor Warren bunched into a highly competent fist, flicked across and caught the assailant under the ear. Enderby, alias Livius, fell as if smitten by a cestus. As his arm touched the floor, Average Jones kicked unerringly at the wrist, and the knife flew and tinkled into a far corner. Bertram, with a bound, landed on the fallen man's chest and pinned him. "Did he get you, Average?" he cried.
Not this time. Pretty good teamwork,
drawled the adviser.
We've got our man for felonious assault, at least.
Enderby, panting under Bertram's solid knee, blinked and struggled.
"No use, Livius," said Average Jones. "Might as well quiet down and confess. Ease up a little on him, Bert. Take a look at that scar of his first, though." "Superficial cut treated with makeup. A clever job," pronounced Bertram after a quick examination. "As I supposed," said Average Jones. "Let me in on the deal," pleaded Livius. "That letter is worth $10,000, $12,000, $15,000. Anything you want to ask, if you find the right purchaser. And you can't manage it without me. Let me in."
"Thinks we're crooks, too," remarked Average Jones. "Exactly what's in this wonderful letter?"
"It's from Bacon to the author of the book, who wrote about 1610. Bacon prophesies that Shakespeare, this vagabond and humble mummer, would outshine and outlive in fame all the genius of his time. That's all I could make out by loosening the stitches."
"Well, that's worth anything one could demand," said Warren in a somewhat awed tone. "Why didn't you get the letter when you were examining it at the auction room?" inquired Average Jones.
"Some fool of a binder had overlooked the double cover and sewn it in. I noticed it at the auction, gummed the opening together while no one was watching, and had gone to get cash to buy the book, but the auctioneer put it up out of turn, and old Graham got it. Bring it to me. I'll show you the pursed cover. Many of Percival's books were bound that way."
"We've never had it nor seen it," replied Average Jones. "The advertisement was only a trap into which you stepped." Enderby's jaw dropped.
"Then it's still at the Graham house,"
he cried, beating on the floor with his free hand.
"Take me back there." "Oh, we'll take you," said
Warren grimly. Close packed among them in a cab, they drove him back to Carteret Street. Colonel Ridgway Graham was at home and greeted them courteously. "You found Livius," he said with relief. "I had begun to fear for him." "Colonel Graham," began Average Jones, "you have—" "What? Speech?" cried the old gentleman. "And you a mute? What does this mean?"
"Never mind him," broke in Enderby Livius. "There's something more important."
But the colonel had shrunk back. "English from you, Livius!" he cried, setting his hand to his brow.
"All will be explained in time, Colonel," Warren assured him. "Meanwhile, you have a document of the utmost importance and value. Do you remember buying one of the Percival volumes at the Berkeley auction?"
The collector drew his brows down in an effort to remember. "An octavo, in fairly good condition?" he asked.
Yes, yes, cried Enderby eagerly. "Where is it? What did you do with it?"
"It was in Latin, very false Latin." The foreman leaned forward, breathless. "Oh, I remember. It slipped from my pocket and fell into the river as I was crossing the ferry to Jersey." There was a dead, flat, stricken silence. Then Average Jones turned hollow eyes upon Warren. "Professor," he said, with a rueful attempt at a smile, "what's the past participle, passive, plural, of the Latin verb to sting?" End of The Man Who Spoke Latin by Samuel Hopkins Adams. Recorded by Catherine Edman.